Hey everyone, welcome to the first edition of the Long Tail Sessions, a vlog dedicated to great music, career advice, and great conversations with folks that I bring in over the next several weeks and months and years, hopefully. So, what is the idea behind the Long Tail Sessions? This podcast or vlog, the goal is to have a conversation about great music that is happening all around us. I was on a plane to New York a few months ago, and I was flying Virgin Atlantic, and on the back of the seats they have the little media players, and I was decided to listen to some music as we were flying, and as I looked, I noticed that it was pretty amazing. So you may see this too if you're flying with Virgin Atlantic. They have all of the composers or the artists are black and white photos. So as I was scrolling through, and it wasn't genre specific. So as I was scrolling through, you'd have Brahms next to Beck, next to Beethoven, next to the Beatles, and I found it both jarring and very interesting at the same time. And it occurs to me, as we all know, we have very different listening habits these days. We're not genre specific. We're listening to all types of music, and so the goal for this work here is to introduce you to some new music. So each week, paired with this vlog, I will put a Spotify playlist up that will coincide with the work or the things that we talk about. The goal is also to come up with a topic, hopefully a career development topic shared by you for the arts field, things that you'd like to know about the arts field, things that you'd like to learn, anything that help you get a leg up in the career that you're embarking upon as an artist. And then finally, the goal is to have some great conversations with people that I know, and hopefully new people, to introduce you to their world, so you can see various types of career paths that are out there. So I thought today the first playlist is up, and just a note about the line of thinking here. The long tail, the concept of the long tail was coined in the early to mid 2000s. The idea is that you have, with the advent of the internet, it gives every artist a level playing field. So historically speaking, artist managers would have to have their picks. So they pick I'm thinking specifically of popular music, for example. They pick their 5 artists to be on their roster and really promote, and then everybody else would fall to the wayside. Well, now with the internet, we all have a shot at that slice of pie. So you might have John Mayer up on the top of the curve. Think about a long tail that goes on forever, with John Mayer up on top. But then you have a number of amazing artists that sound similar to John Mayer that are also carving out or trying to carve out a career for themselves. And with places like YouTube and Spotify, it gives artists a shot to be seen. So the interesting thing about all of this technology is, of course, how are artists getting paid? And I think, I'm encouraged by some of the work that I'm seeing happen behind the scenes. We'll spend more time in the future talking about Spotify. My advice to all of you listeners, is if you want to make a difference in artists' careers and lives, pay for the premium mode of Spotify. I'm not endorsed by Spotify. I don't even know the people at Spotify. I'm thinking specifically about the artists themselves. If you're using the free version of Spotify, it is very, very, very difficult for artists to make any type of money from the work that they're doing. They have a little bit more of a shot if you're paying into the system. So I encourage you to pay into Spotify, pay that monthly premium. Again, really not about an endorsement of Spotify. It's about helping artists move themselves forward. The other thing I want to just kind of frame here as we go through these conversations is that I think that YouTube and Spotify, Pandora, these online services that have popped up, I think we have to really be thinking about a new way to engage with our audiences. And I think these can be tools of engagement. So this is not necessarily the way that we as artists may be making money, but I think by promoting artists, putting their name out there, it will help. I think it will help us all kind of move the field forward and help artists sustain themselves. So with that in mind, as you listen to the playlists that I put up, I encourage you to do to take some action, and it really is about action for me. So the first step would be to follow the artists yourselves and listen to the works that they have. If you hear something that's of particular interest, listen to their work. Commit to buying some of their merchandise. A lot of artists are making premium versions of their recordings in order to sustain themselves. They have Patreon pages to sustain themselves. Commit in some way, shape, or form to supporting that artist in a deeper way. And then finally, I think most importantly, figure out when that artist is going to be in your area and go to their concert. Show up. Showing up is so important in our world in so many different ways. And I think that in order to continue to help musicians and artists make great art, we have to figure out a way to support them. And these are 3 small steps, but I think, 15 years ago I would have said go buy their CD. That's just not in the cards anymore. So we have to be thinking about new ways and new models of addressing sustainability in the arts. And so that's why I'm taking a shot at this idea of the long tail sessions. I'd love your comments and your thoughts. I think I'm excited to have this going. I'm excited to have a conversation with all of you. But I think that what's to come, we're going to get a great diversity of music going and hopefully get you all interested in some new art that you've never heard before. So great. I want to take just a little bit and talk about this week's the first list of songs that I've selected, and then the last little part I'm going to talk to you about a question that's come in to me that I've been giving advice on to a couple of people I've been working with. So in terms of the playlist for this year, this week, I have a good mix of things of artists that are important to me, and also music that's important to me. So you'll see first, I have this beautiful arrangement of the Nimrod by Edward Elgar, which is near and dear to me because Enigma Variations is one of the first pieces I remember playing as a bassoonist. This is a beautiful arrangement by a vocal ensemble that I know you're going to enjoy, and I think the world of the piece. It's very relaxing and kind of a good way to start off the mix. The next piece is I tend to trend indie music a lot, especially as I'm sitting at my desk and listening to good music. Dustin Tebbett, a song called "The Breach," which a beautiful acoustic song, kind of relaxing. Again, beautiful music. That I really grew to love about 3 years ago in the search for some new music. The next piece is a solo cello piece called Julie O by Mark Summer, and it's a beautiful kind of folk tune with some beatboxing included, which I really appreciated and enjoyed listening to. The next piece I heard, it's a piece by Monsieur Pierney, which is Sabor a Mi, which I actually heard Monsieur Pierney on a Tiny Desk concert about 2.5 years ago, and they absolutely blew me away. They're kind of a throwback group. You'll hear in this song they use kind of music of boutique jazz music of the 20s and 30s and kind of put a modern twist on it. Really beautiful, amazing music, and with a real kind of South American flair to it. I just love the music. They're a group out of Colombia, and I think you'll enjoy listening to them. I'm looking up here because I have the playlist up here. Sufjan Stevens wrote an amazing album about 3 years ago called Carrie and Lowell. Again, a personal connection to this music. Sufjan and his family went to the same school that I did for a while. I actually, I knew him when story is that I played on the same Pee Wee basketball team as Sufjan. So Sufjan, if you ever listen to this, great times playing basketball way back in the day. But I've grown to really love and appreciate his music more importantly, and this is just a stunningly beautiful song that I think you'll enjoy. And then the last three songs are three songs that have been kind of in my own personal life mix over the last 3 years. A song by Teeter, William Fitzsimmons, and a great song rounding it off by Lake Street Dive, and a cover of Rich Girl. All three of these songs, there are certain songs that keep coming back up in your playlist, and these were all three beautiful songs that I just wanted to kick off the Long Tail sessions sharing with you. So I hope you enjoy this mix, and again, comments are totally welcome, and if you have a song that you want to be added to a mix, please send it my way. Share it in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. I'm always excited to be introduced to new music, and I should mention that as I bring new guests on, I will be asking all of them to share their mixes, and we'll be adding them to the Long Tail sessions as well. So I hope you enjoy the mix. So the final bit today in our first episode is just a short discussion about career development questions that come for artists. As many of you know, my job is as a career development advisor at the Colburn School in Los Angeles, and so I often am advising students and counseling them on various aspects of their career and life, not just while they're in school, but I often have contact with students after, well beyond the time that they're at the institution. So every week I'm going to have a different topic that I'll introduce that comes hopefully from you, the listener. If you have questions you'd like to ask, please share them in the comments below, or there's any number of ways to contact me on my social media sites. But the question this week is one that I've been kind of advising students on for a long time. And the question in particular that I received from a student just in the last week goes something like this. He was asking what advice I have for an artist who has either taken out student loans or is considering taking out loans to pay for the next phase in their schooling. And student loans are, they can be it's a complicated thing, right? So you've got a few things. There are a few things I'd love to have you think about as you think about the student loans that you're potentially going to take out for the next phase, whether going to undergrad or grad school. The first thing that I want to put out is that student loans are still some of the best investment you can make in yourself out there. And I wrote a couple of blog posts this week, which I'll link you to. Warren Buffett is famous for saying, one of his big quotes is, if above many other things, invest in yourself first. So school, going to college, investing in college, there's very few things that can be a better investment for upward mobility. Now here's the challenge. When you decide where you're going to school, and what you want your profession to be beyond school, I think this is where it gets to be a challenge, because universities are getting more and more and more expensive as time goes on. And in order to pay for school, obviously you may be in a position where you need to take out more and more loans. My advice to students thinking about that next step is always have options, right? So have your school that is your dream school. Maybe your dream school costs $50,000 a year to attend, and there are plenty that cost that much. But I usually advise students to have or individuals to have 5 schools in which they're thinking about for going on to that next phase in their career. And then it's a balancing act. So I'm not opposed to going to a school that costs $50,000 a year, but I encourage my students, I encourage all of you to think about what is the cost of paying that amount of a loan back after you finish your time at the school. And are any of these other 4 options less expensive, and would you get a similar experience? I think there's a mix of value and the fit for you that is really important. But at the end of the day, my advice is always to take out as few loans as possible, no matter what. The value of taking out less loans saves you money and makes you more money over time. The other thing to really think about is, let's say that you go to the school that costs $50,000 a year. If your goal and dream is to be an artist after you graduate, and you're strapped with $200,000 in student loans, then it's going to be much more difficult for you to pay off those loans than it would be if somebody was going into computer science, for example, where you come out of school and the pay is much higher right out of the gate. I think everybody should be a music major, an arts major. I've done some writing about that. I'll connect that as well in the link, as a link below. It's not a question of whether or not you should be an artist or an art major. I think the thing for me is about the amount of flexibility you can have when you graduate. And the fewer loans you have, the more flexibility you have to make decisions to go after the art form that you're going to school to pursue. The more flexibility you have to live in maybe a more expensive place. Think about living in a cultural center like here in Los Angeles. The cost of living in LA as opposed to being in a lesser expensive place in another part of the country. It's all a balancing act that you should be considering. But I think most importantly, the goal for you is really trying to lower the risk as much as possible so that when you come out you have the most options. And that means taking out trying to take out as few loans as possible. Final thought on this is that all universities across the country have to go through an accreditation process. So the curriculum that is being offered at an institution that is $10,000 a year is going to be basically the same as an institution that you have to pay $50,000 a year. There are some different fringe benefits that might come with going to a $50,000 a year institution. But again, remember, if your goal is to be working as an artist after you graduate, then the lower the loans, I really 10 out of 10 times I'm going to recommend that you go to the place that is $10,000 a year, just so you're not strapped with debt. So I'm going to take so that's for those that are thinking about going into school. Now, the flip side of that is what happens on the other end when you come out and you have some loans, and you're trying to figure out how to pay them back. Most times you have a 30-year payback period. So I just turned 40, and I still have loans. I still have a number of years left. So for those of you in your 20s thinking about the length of time. This goes on for a long time. Um, but remember, I still believe there's a great value in taking out student loans. And there are a number of strategies that I've written about, which again in a link below that you can look through. But the big thing is that you can deduct the interest off your loans each year, especially of those who are just starting to pay back your loans. You're going to get most of those payments back in the form of a tax return. You're not going to get a direct payment back, but it's a write-off for you at the end of each year. So that's incredibly valuable in the first few years, especially as you're starting to pay things down. I'm a huge fan of paying more every month than whatever your minimum is. Even if it's $5 a month, it saves you months and even years off of the end balance. And it seems like nothing, but the more you can budget in now to pay off, the faster you're going to get out of your loans. It could end up being years that you carve out and take back from the repayment period. A couple of life things that I like to talk to students who are recent graduates. Think about your budget in college and stay on that. Go back to whatever you were doing in college and live like a college student for a couple more years, and just pay as much as you can on your loans. Again, any dollar over the minimum payment each month is going to cut into that principal and pay you down even faster. And then the last thing is consider where you're living as a way to help give you more flexibility. It's all about flexibility as an artist, right? How much space and time do you have to do the things that you want to do? If you're weighted with an expensive place to live and loans, you have less flexibility. So think about taking on some roommates to mitigate some of that cost, or think about moving to a location in the country that's less expensive. Those are just some thoughts just off the top of my head. Again, I've written pretty extensively about it, and there's one more thing that I'd love to share with you. I created a free tool that will help you think about your loans. So it's a repayment calculator, so you can go in and put how much in loans you've taken out, what the interest rate is, which I believe is 4.45% right now for federal loans. And then you can look at the repayment period, and you can put in the mix of paying more money or less money, so you can see how long it'll actually take you to pay off your loans as you're thinking about taking them out. Or on the flip side, if you already have loans, to help you create a strategy for how quickly you want to pay them off. So that's it for today. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the inaugural long tail session. And again, I love comments. Any comments that you have, please share them below. I'm going to start off with a question to all of you. Do you have strategies that you've used that I maybe didn't talk about today about your student loans that you found particularly helpful? I love to share ideas. I want to create a community here. So any ideas that you have, I'd love to share them with all of the people listening. So thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed the session.